Have you ever wondered what's going on right beneath your feet when you walk through a forest? Well, it turns out there's a hidden world down there, a secret network, kind of like a biological internet that connects trees in ways we're only just starting to wrap our heads around. Today, we're diving into the incredible science behind what people have called the Wood Wide Web. So just picture yourself standing here in this massive ancient forest. You look up, you see these huge trees, sun poking through the leaves, and it's easy to think of them as just individuals, all competing for their own patch of sunlight and space. But the real story, the one that truly defines this whole ecosystem, is happening completely unseen, right under the ground. And this leads to an almost magical question, right? What if these trees aren't just standing next to each other, but are actually communicating? What if they're sharing food, sending out warnings, and even helping each other out through this enormous living network? Now, this idea isn't just a fairy tale. It actually burst into the scientific world back in 1997. A scientist named Suzanne Simard, who literally grew up in the forests of Canada, published some truly groundbreaking research. Her work showed for the very first time that, trees really were linked by this incredible underground web of fungi. It was such a revolutionary idea that it pretty quickly got a perfect nickname, the Wood Wide Web, an organic internet for the entire forest. It just fits, doesn't it? So, how in the world does this natural internet actually work? Well, to understand that, we need to meet the master architects of the whole system. The official scientific name is a mycorrhizal network, and the whole thing is built by fungi, specifically these incredibly fine thread-like structures called hyphae. They spread out and fuse with the roots of trees and other plants, physically linking them all together. Now, at the very heart of this relationship is a trade. It's a classic symbiotic partnership. The plant, does its thing with photosynthesis, making sugars from sunlight. It then sends those sugars down through its roots to feed the fungus. And in return, the fungal network acts like a giant extension of the tree's own roots, reaching out and grabbing water and crucial nutrients, like nitrogen and phosphorus, that the tree can't get on its own. And this connection basically happens in two main ways. The most common kind, arbuscular, is where the fungal threads actually go inside the plant's root cells. But then there's another major type, ectomycorrhiza, which you see a lot in northern forests. And in that case, the threads weave a super dense net between the root cells. So two different strategies, but they both lead to the same incredible partnership. Okay, so we've got this network, but what is it actually doing? Well, the first and most proven function is that it acts like a giant underground marketplace. And we are not talking about a small, casual transaction here. The scale of this investment is just staggering. A plant will send up to 30%, of the carbon it produces from sunlight down to its fungal partners. I mean, that is a massive chunk of its energy budget, which tells you just how critical this relationship is for its survival. And this whole process is incredibly dynamic. It's not static at all. Research has actually tracked carbon moving between different types of trees as the seasons change. So like in the spring, an evergreen Douglas fir can shuttle carbon over to a paper birch that's just starting to grow its new leaves. But then by summer, when the birch has a full canopy and is making lots of sugar, it sends carbon back to the fir, which might be struggling in the shade. The resources flow to whoever needs them most, making the entire forest stronger. All right, this is where things get even more wild. The network doesn't just move food. There's more and more evidence that it also transmits information, signals and warnings that travel like whispers through the web. The language of this network is all chemistry. Scientists call these signals infochemicals. So these aren't just nutrients. They're very specific chemical messages that travel through the fungal network and trigger a response in the plant that receives them. So here's how that might work. Let's say one tree gets attacked by a swarm of insects. It doesn't just suffer alone. It starts producing defensive chemicals, right? And it seems to release some of those as a warning signal into the network. Other trees that are connected get that signal, and they can actually ramp up their own defensive systems, basically getting ready for an attack before it even gets to them. But it's not all cooperation and sharing. The network can also be used for straight-up competition. The black walnut tree, for instance, is notorious for releasing a toxin into the soil, and some research suggests that this network can help spread that chemical around, basically poisoning the soil for any rival plants trying to grow nearby. It's chemical warfare. Okay, As cool and captivating as all of this is, we have to take a step back. It is absolutely essential to understand that this is an area of really intense scientific debate right now. The popular story of talking trees has, in some ways, gotten a little ahead of the hard evidence. In fact, as some researchers have pointed out, many of these popular claims you might hear about have been criticized inside the scientific community for not being strongly supported by the evidence we have so far. And here's why it's so tricky. A real forest is an incredibly complex place to study. How do you prove for sure who's connected to whom? And do controlled lab experiments really mimic what happens in the wild? There's also a huge question. Are these chemicals moving through a direct fungal pipeline, or are they just kind of leaking into the soil and getting picked up by neighbors? And maybe the most important question of all, even if a tiny bit of this transfer is happening, is it enough to actually make a real difference for a tree's survival? These are the tough questions researchers are still trying to figure out. But even with all of that debate, we really shouldn't lose sight of the bigger picture, because the core of this discovery, it's still one of the most fundamental relationships on Earth. So, controversy aside, let's be super clear about this. The basic partnership between plants and fungi is not in doubt, not at all. This symbiosis is literally the reason plants were able to colonize land in the first place, over 400 million years ago. Without it, our world just wouldn't look anything like it does today. And the benefits that are proven are profound. We know for a fact that these networks dramatically increase the survival rate for new seedlings. We know they move critical resources to plants growing in tougher spots. And by doing all that, they boost the entire ecosystem's resilience and its biodiversity. These aren't just minor details. They're the processes that build a healthy, thriving forest. So the next big frontier is to actually see this hidden world. And there's an organization called SPRUN, the Society for the Protection of Underground Networks, that's doing just that. They're collecting massive amounts of data to create the very first global map of these fungal networks, an underground atlas. And what they're finding already is pretty mind-blowing. The data shows that over 90% of our planet's most diverse underground fungal ecosystems are completely unprotected. And this matters. It matters a lot because these are the networks that are crucial for pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and keeping our soil healthy enough to grow food. It's just a powerful reminder that the forest floor isn't just dirt. It really is a living, breathing skin for our entire planet. We've barely scratched the surface of understanding this underground world. The science is still evolving, the debates are happening, but one thing is absolutely for sure. There are so many more secrets just waiting to be discovered right beneath our feet. The question is, what are they going to tell us next?